Okay, welcome. As writing will be one of the two major components of this class, I think it is only fair to answer the question, why study writing? Why give it so much emphasis? And the truth is, I truly believe that writing is power. Okay? Writing is economic power. Uh, Admittedly, many entry level jobs, the kind that students in high school and college typically tend to have, do not require exceptional writing skills. However, having worked as a manager in one of these jobs, as a second job as a teacher, I worked at Carmike Cinemas and made some hiring decisions. I can tell you that students applying for these positions are instantly branded as illiterates if their resumes contain misspelled words and grammar errors and are lazily put together. Furthermore, if your resume is okay, but you get on the job and your communication is illegible and poorly spelled, grammatically hard to understand, then again, it affects the business's assumptions about your competency. Okay. In addition, in terms of economic power, writing still helps to create economic power. When we look at the other type of jobs, okay, most professional fields require training of some kind, and many require a 4-year degree. Non-English faculty members regard the ability to communicate effectively as an essential professional skill. C.L. Gilmore, who is a professor of industrial engineering, says an engineer without the tools of communication is unable to sell his ideas, no matter how good those ideas are. David G. Armstrong indicates that proficiency in written English is a must for a public school teacher who hopes to have any credibility as a professional. And finally, D. Salak, who is a professor of civil engineering, indicates that most students consider English a waste of time, yet I get letters from former students thanking me for the strict approach I took toward writing. Probably no other trait sets out a new engineer from his contemporaries in his first assignments as does the ability to write. Furthermore, similar quotes are available from such widely spread professional fields as oil companies, engineering companies, business companies, etc. The CEO of Associate Director of Personnel, at Conoco says inadequate communication skills will have a direct bearing on a college graduate's promotion opportunities. You want that promotion? Better be able to communicate effectively. My major criticism, says Paul Wolf, who is the executive vice president of Mobil Oil, of the written communications of our newly hired graduates is that they write too much or too little. The knack of effective communication is to give all that is needed for complete understanding, but no more. We'll be dealing with that in this class. Finally, K.W. Bruder, who is the general manager at Swift & Company, says that an individual can be brilliant, but if he or she lacks communication skills, it is unlikely that he or she will be successful in the business world. And so, much of our advancement, our ability to obtain jobs, even at the most basic level, is tied to our ability to communicate effectively. Finally, secondly, writing provides social power. I intentionally picked this picture. If we think about the president, whether one approves of the man or not is irrelevant at this point. For this point, his use of Twitter, a written form of communication, terribly simple, has been very, very powerful in its impact on his presidency to this point, and was very powerfully impactful during his campaign. Whether it is good or bad isn't the point. The point is that it's very, very powerful. And writing continues to be a source of social power and a social necessity. The ability to write is important because language is indispensable to our society, written language. We are social animals. We use language to touch others. We use language to make sense of our world. Writing helps our memory and helps us organize our lives, whether we're talking about formal organization or something as simple as grocery lists or taking notes at a meeting or during telephone calls or while studying. We establish formal relationships with people with pen and paper. Although it may be on computer today, it is still in a written form when we want to make something official. Think about buying a house, writing laws, legal contracts, marriage licenses, insurance documents. Even the digital forms are kept in a document form and are referred to as documents. In our society, putting it in writing has greater force than speaking. Finally, writing creates knowledge. It is a means of creating knowledge, and knowledge itself is also power. Writing functions as a way of knowing, a way of understanding. It helps us to solve problems, both personal problems and professional problems. It permits us to understand not only the world, but ourselves. We can discover who we are by writing because it forces us to clarify our thoughts, to put them in an organized fashion, and often that is when we first really understand them. Think as well about how learning a professional dialect and form of written expression that ties to your job is key to having legitimacy in a job. Furthermore, mastering those things and being able to function in that language and exchange is what allows students to be doctors or social workers or mechanics. It's what enables us to understand what we read and tells us how to communicate with colleagues. Finally, writing is a manner of thinking. It's not merely utilitarian. Because other media threaten to recreate us as plastic people, Disney delusions, and Madison Avenue stereotypes, we want to write honestly with a tough sensitivity about subjects that matter to us as a way of resisting this recreating of ourselves that is really in someone else's image or control. And learning to write allows us to do that by allowing us to examine ourselves and our own thoughts and beliefs in an organized fashion. Learning to write well also has a value far beyond any power to bring in a paycheck or pass a course. It helps us to relate ideas to each other and to other people and to ourselves. It helps us to solve problems. Putting something into a story is how we make sense of our experiences. We create a narrative, and a narrative is a product of language. It teaches us to manipulate a complex symbol system and to communicate our thoughts in many voices and manners. And this is applicable in other functions. There's a reason they call programming languages. It allows us to share experiences, and finally, it is the most basic form we have after oral communication to transfer and preserve knowledge. If we don't learn to communicate well, that is, to write and speak effectively, our use of language will separate us from others, create misunderstandings, cause us to intentionally deceive others, and, or increasingly often, it will cause us to be the victims of intentional deceptions and dishonest communications. Uh, so we study writing because it provides us with economic power, it provides us with social power, and it helps us to gain knowledge and to know ourselves better. At the most personal level, knowing how to communicate effectively and to effectively understand communication enriches our lives.